Somebody once told me the world is gonna roll me. I ain't the sharpest tool in the shed.
If you even grew up in the 2000s or really lived around this time period, you know who he is. No one could escape him. The Shrek franchise is something of a great one. 3 awesome movies.
Joe, you forgot about Shrek the Third.
I have no idea what you're talking about. My main point is that the series has become very popular, then becoming also the face of DreamWorks in a way. But today we are going to be looking back on all the Shrek movies with somewhat quick plot summaries, and at the end, rank them in a tier list style. With that out of the way, let's get started. Ah yes, the first Shrek movie. What is not to love here? The movie opens up with one of the most classic movie intros ever, with the opening of the fairy tale book, with Smash Mouth to boot. The plot is pretty simple. Shrek is an ogre who lives alone, who gets a bunch of fairy tale weirdos exiled to his land by a king named Lord Farquaad. Angered, he heads to his castle with his new best friend, Donkey, with him, who he just rescued earlier. After breaking into the kingdom and beating up some people, the king sees that Shrek is really strong and has a lot in his disposal, so he tells Shrek to go rescue a princess named Fiona so he can marry her and become king, because if he does, on his side, he'll get all of his land back and the fairy tale creatures off of his land. That's the best way I could simplify it. This movie is so well known, I don't really need to explain it in depth. First off, I just gotta say, the soundtrack for this movie is really good. Every song fits every scene very well. Especially the Hallelujah sequence, that part is just so good. This movie is also pretty funny, not laugh out loud funny, but there are a few jokes that landed with me pretty well. There is a reason why this movie is so well remembered. They took a generic, overused plot and flipped it on its head. For example, the Disney plot back in the day would be the overly happy-sappy princess movie. And with this movie, it changed that concept and made it more mature and crude. And compared to other things coming out at the time, it was a pretty different and new idea. Something that adults and kids could enjoy alike. This movie feels like a breath of fresh air to a lot of people. So, combination of good characters, good humor, good everything. Everyone started wondering, is there going to be a sequel? Well, there sure was a sequel, and boy is this the best way Shrek could continue possible. I have a lot to say about this movie, and I'll explain the plot as best as I can. The movie opens up with another storybook of you, but with one key difference. It's read by Prince Charming, more of a minor character in the last film, where he tells us that he traveled all the way to the castle to rescue Princess Fiona, but only to find that one wolf character I don't know the name of, to tell him she's off on her honeymoon. Then we cut to what I think is a really sweet part, showing the growth of Shrek and Fiona's love for each other since the first movie. A really touching scene, just getting to see them on their honeymoon. And once the two get back home, they are greeted with everyone's favorite donkey. After some shenanigans, royal guards from the far, far away kingdom come to tell Fiona that she is invited back home to visit the king and queen, aka her parents who locked her in the tower. And this is where the movie truly begins. After some arguing, Shrek is like, no, I don't want to go to the kingdom to meet your parents. But he agrees, and once they arrive, he was right. Her parents aren't that thrilled to see that her daughter has married an ogre. After a not-so-great family dinner, the fairy godmother, which is the main antagonist, approaches Fiona telling her that she can make her life better in every way. Shrek coming in and shooing off the fairy godmother, she gets angry and plots a plan to kill Shrek with the king. After Shrek finds out about the plot to kill him, he sneaks with Donkey and the newly introduced Puss in Boots to go get a potion from the fairy godmother's factory so he can fix and make Fiona happy on his own. And that's my quick plot summary. I'm gonna say this immediately, this movie is very, very funny. Coming from a person who doesn't really laugh out loud at a lot of movies, this movie succeeds in making me laugh out loud on multiple occasions. Probably even more than that. This movie just slams out joke after joke, and the writers were on a roll with this one. But besides the humor, this movie succeeds at a lot more. One thing I love about this movie is that the stakes just keep rising and rising higher with what feels like every minute. So you just want to keep watching because more and more things that keep you invested just keep happening, such as the moment Shrek and the others get caught in prison and Gingy, Pinocchio, and the rats bust them out of prison with dynamite. After that, they make a giant gingerbread person to attack the castle where Fiona and the fairy godmother is. And the ending, it's great, it's awesome. The movie ends with the famous I Need a Hero sequence, and it's a giant battle through the castle to get to Fiona. The ending is the perfect climax to all the suspense and high stakes the movie builds up. And at the end, Shrek and Fiona realize they don't need to be perfect, they just need to be ogres and live out the rest of their days just as they first got married. Aw, how sweet. Oh yeah, and Fiona's dad turns into a frog. Neat. This was the best way they ever could continue Shrek. Great pacing, good humor, awesome ending, new character, very charming, and much, much more. This movie tops Shrek 1 in almost every single way, which is what a sequel's job is in the first place. And don't ask me if this movie is loved by a ton more people than just me. Look at this! Crazy. Well, here I am talking about Shrek 3. Where do I begin? So instead of the normal Shrek opening with a book, we are greeted by Prince Charming at the theater, playing the role of himself on stage. Soon after, he is booed off stage and goes to his actor's booth crying to himself about how he was the rightful heir to the throne of Far, Far Away and not Shrek. After that, we cut to Shrek and Fiona waking up in the castle of Far, Far Away, where Shrek has to fill in the duties of the king and also deal with the fact he's a father now. Oh yeah, and Fiona's dad dies. So yeah, that's the plot for this one. Can't spend too much time on it because it doesn't feel like it has much of one. Shrek 3 feels like some weird spin-off of Shrek. This movie is one of the most boring experiences I have ever really sat through in my life. I will say, everyone and their mother hates this movie, but in my honest opinion, yeah, it's terrible, but it's more boring than anything. Where Shrek 2 had great pacing, the stakes were always rising, and it had an ultimate ending with a battle, all Shrek 3 has is a bunch of characters that go nowhere, and a bunch of gross-out humor. No substance to anything. One of the main points of Shrek is to have humor both adults and kids can enjoy. But the more edgy, crude, adult-leaning jokes are all absent here. Where Shrek 2 made me laugh out loud on multiple occasions, Shrek 3 just got a bunch of sighs out of me. Along with it not being funny, it is also very, very, very boring. When the movie attempts at being heartfelt or sappy, it falls as flat as its humor. Where Shrek 2 conveys its meaningful moments through dialogue and character interaction, what does Shrek 3 have?
Oh no. Better out than in, I always say.
I think you get my point. So again, yes, this movie is bad, but it's not as terrible as everyone says it is. Just a boring and unfunny, poorly executed mess of a sequel. Where Shrek 2 was the perfect sequel, this is the perfect ending. Shrek 4 opens up with another book opening with a recap of the story as of yet, but this time it's read by the movie's main villain, Rumpelstiltskin. We learn that Rumpelstiltskin is a man with magic contracts that could change a person's life. One of which he was going to use to trick the king and queen into signing, because he said if they were to, Fiona wouldn't need true love and her curse of being an ogre at night would be solved. But right as they were going to sign it, news came that she had found her true love, aka Shrek. This angered him due to the catch being far, far away being signed to him, putting him in a position to resent Shrek. After that, we go back to Shrek, see him living out his life with his wife and kids. We see him slowly grow less and less happy as the days go by, starting to reminisce about the old days of his life after he freaks out at his son's birthday party, and has an argument with Fiona. He storms out into the forest where he finds Rumpelstiltskin after greeting him and having some dinner. Rumpelstiltskin tells Shrek he could have a day like the old days before Fiona and the others, back when the world made sense to Shrek, and says he can get one by signing one of his contracts. But the catch is that Shrek has to give up a day of his past to Rumpelstiltskin to give him a new one. So Shrek agrees to give Rumpelstiltskin a day from when he was a baby, something he would not remember. So, when he's put in his new day, he has fun for a while, until finding his swamp and realizing it's only a desert now. After this, he's caught by a group of witches and hauled off to Stiltskin's new kingdom that was once far, far away. After being brought in chains to talk with Stiltskin, Stiltskin tells Shrek the day of Shrek's birth was taken from him. And you see, without Shrek being born in this new reality, his swamp never becomes a home, dries up. Donkey is sold into slavery, and Fiona is never rescued. Therefore, all of his children don't even exist. And the biggest thing is that the king and queen sign his contract, turn into literal dust, giving him the crown, and Rumpel becomes king. He was playing 800 plus chess. I'm sorry, but here I felt good for our villain. He set up everything all for himself, and he was smart about it. After all, a good portion of all of this is Shrek's fault in the first place. He learns that you don't know how good you have it until it's gone. And this is what I love about this movie. It puts aside the normal humor of Shrek and puts a more serious undertone to everything that really sets the mood for the entire thing. I haven't gotten to the whole Fiona part yet. Oh yeah, the Fiona part. Since she was never actually rescued, she leaves herself, keeping all the trauma with never being rescued, and tells herself true love never existed in the first place. But the thing is that Shrek needs a true love's kiss to get back to normal. Oh yeah, and she's leading this whole rebellion of other ogres. That was cool. Overall, this was the perfect way to end Shrek, with him dying and both of them getting the final kiss. And sending Shrek back to the birthday party where this whole ordeal started. This time, choosing to be grateful and happy for his family and great life. And then there's a pretty funny music sequence after that to end the thing off. This whole movie was the perfect ending to Shrek, adding a nice little bow on the top of the series. Well, first of all, let's get this out of the way. We all know what the worst movie is. Shrek 3. Shits all over the legacy of the franchise in Shrek 2, with a boring plot and toilet humor. Yeah, we're gonna throw that in D tier. Shrek 1 is a classic and that's never going to change. It does so much right with so little. It took the basic concept of fairy tale stories and flipped it on its head. Memorable characters, great humor, and a talking donkey. That's going in B tier. Shrek 2 I like. I said before, it is the best way they could have continued the first Shrek movie. Ramp up the humor by 100 times and give a good villain with motivation, and you got a way better movie than Shrek 1 in every possible way. Easily an S tier. Shrek 4 has the best atmosphere out of the entire franchise, even beating out the rising stakes of Shrek 2. Just the cold and somber tone of the fourth one is so good and just really resonates with me. Like I said before, it's the perfect little bow on the series. Easy S tier. Well, then ranking the movies. Now what? Well, I will say that new Rick and Morty episode was really good. I'm gonna put that in A tier. Taco Bell is a really good restaurant. Pretty much in the afternoon too. B tier. Also, Purina Cat Chow. I really like the crunch. S tier. New SpongeBob movie was bad. E tier. Big Chungus is the best meme ever. 10 out of 10. Best meme ever again. S tier.